Hardcore Leveling Warrior is the greatest webtoon I've ever read, and to prove it, I reread all 318 chapters of Hardcore Leveling Warrior. Now, don't get me wrong, it is by no means perfect, but it is by far my favorite webtoon. It manages to capture the same magic as watching Naruto as a kid for the first time, and while there are several aspects that make Hardcore Leveling Warrior the GOAT, above all else, it has to be Ethan Gong, otherwise known as Hardcore Leveling Warrior himself. Now, there are two major factors that make Hardcore Leveling Warrior, the person, so great. The first being his character. He separates himself from other generic MCs. From the get-go, he's narcissistic, egotistical, and extremely self-centered. He's lost everyone and everything important to him, transforming him into a person he's become by the start of Season 1. Not unlike the arrogant demeanor of abridged Kirito or Tony Stark. Much like the two of them, he became a witty yet narcissistic prick, but only because the world had forced him to be this way. At a young age, his parents died, he dropped out of school and lost all his money to gambling. Now he's trapped in a labor camp, working for a loan shark till he pays off his debt. It's honestly impressive how not depressed he is, though that is likely due to his simple-mindedness. It's obvious when he's happy, and he's not afraid to let someone know he's bad. But when it comes down to it, Hardcore Leveling Warrior is also really intelligent, and often pretends to be dumb in order to lure in opponents. Despite it all, you can't help but love the guy. Deep down, you know he has a heart, which slowly emerges as time goes on. But before that, there's Ethan Gong. He'd rather be Hardcore Leveling Warrior, an invincible warrior he can never be in the real world. Even when he talks and fights, he's confident, but not arrogant. He may act like a fool, but under the guise, he's incredibly complex and thinks at a level beyond what most perceive. He has complete faith in his ability, even when no one else does. After all he's endured, he lashes out by trolling other players in Lucid Adventure, a game you can play in your dreams. We see this in the first chapter when he flexes his armor as the nearby crowd talks trash about him. One of the many things that makes Hardcore Leveling Warrior so incredible would undoubtedly be the art style. You can see the passion and life poured into each and every panel. It just gets better with every read. When a noob asks for money, he brings out a bag of gold and PKs the noob with it, then bribes the cop with said money just for the fun of it. He proceeds to show no mercy when he gets ambushed by like 20 different people that he trolled in the past. In retrospect, he likely does this because, like abridged Kirito, he has no power in the real world. Only difference being that those who die in the game suffer no consequences, with the exception of Hardcore Leveling Warrior himself, as he gets reset to level 1 every time he dies, due to the unique nature of his class. Now, he may sound like an all-around terrible human being, which is true, for the most part, but you just can't help loving the guy. He has such an incredible and unique personality, unlike most generic shonen protagonists these days. Hardcore's a troll, but he's also a fun guy, able to turn any life-threatening situation upside down and lighten the mood, while still only seeking his personal interest. Despite how much of a jerk he is, he's incredibly endearing and learns to care for his friends along the way, while still remaining true to his character. Despite all his flaws, he has an irresistible charm, almost to a point where it's unexplainable. Much like the aforementioned two, he has this fascinating, perhaps even captivating aura where you can't help but be drawn to him, and this cannot be illustrated better than by the webtoon comments. In the first chapter, even the webtoon comments are pretty on the fence with this guy, being the terrible guy that he is. After he gets killed by Zero, who appears to be a bug character, he loses all his stats, items, and skills, and goes off the chain. Immediately upon fighting, he fails to get a single hit off a level 1 slime.
Doesn't that remind you of something?
The people he obliterated earlier happen to find him, and then proceed to beat him up and res him repeatedly, while keeping him tied up so he can't log out. He gets rescued, but would later challenge their leader, despite being level 1, no armor, and currently at a 0-to-1 win-loss ratio with a level 1 slime. So yeah, the comments were undoubtedly full of skeptics. In fact, I'm surprised in how much faith they did have in him, which is none at all really. Yet, this here displays another thing Hardcore Leveling Warrior does better than any other webtoon. Not only does he subvert expectations in the coolest way, Hardcore Leveling Warrior easily has some of, if not the most interesting and memorable fights. While most webtoons can have beautiful fight sequences that flow pretty well, it's hard to convey good cinematography or interesting fights through linear panels you have to continuously scroll through in a straight line. But that's what linear means. Even the best fights in all of Webtoon are typically just two dudes beating each other back and forth. While that's fine, it not only gets boring after a while, it's both unmemorable and quite frankly repetitive. On the other hand, Hardcore Leveling Warrior is level 1. But there's a reason he reached rank 1 on the server. He uses his in-depth knowledge of the game to beat this guy, with nothing but his wits, knowledge, and strategy, while also using this guy's arrogance to his advantage, defeating him with the same dagger that caused him to lose to Zero. As the story progresses, you can see how the fanbase's opinion of Hardcore shifts, and they have just as much confidence in Hardcore as he does in himself. To top it off, he encounters some good friends, and by the end of the series, you're not only attached but proud to see how much he's grown. The second thing that defines Hardcore is his super unique and creative ability. In the world of lucid adventure, each person is assigned a unique ability, known as their personal attribute. Now this can range from a simple attack buff to literally reversing time. One of the things that makes lucid adventure so magical is the fact that players can craft entirely unique characters through a mixture of their class and personal attribute. Personal attributes are usually assigned based on a person's life, and for Hardcore, whose life was turned upside down due to gambling, what better attribute than one that gives him maxed out luck? His personal attribute is absolute luck, in which he has, would you believe it? Absolute luck. He takes advantage of this by combining it with his class, the Gambler, through which he's able to bet with other players for their stats, items, and even levels, which is actually how he became the #1 ranked player in the game. Furthermore, he's able to buff himself with his lucky coin and get rare items, though perhaps his greatest ability is the ability to defy all expectations even when the odds are against him. You could call it plot armor though. At the end of the day, his confidence and power is a mask, a facade. He uses his snarkiness to protect himself from getting hurt, and despite how he acts, his kind heart shines through all his confidence and sassy nature, making him all the more awesome to watch, and the greatest protagonist in all of Webtoon. Of course, Hardcore Loving Warrior isn't the only character in the series. He may steal the spotlight, but perhaps the backbone of the series isn't just him. Rather, it plays off the dynamic between him and his party. With him are Dark and Sora, who each serve their own purpose. Dark, the emo grandson of Giga Group's president and creator of Lucid Adventure. After repeatedly getting smurfed by his envious family members, Dark, with the help of Hardheater, who's the equivalent of this series' Kakashi or Gojo, enlists the help of Hardcore in order to train Dark up, since he keeps getting smurfed by his family members. While he cares little for inheriting the company, he's the only one who loves his grandpa. Joining them is Sora, who was rescued by Hardcore once. Not that he remembers. Also, he likes food. And that's it. The characters practically write themselves, whatever the situation, and their party is balanced in every way, each of them with their own fighting roles. Unlike in Naruto, Hardcore as the DPS, Sora as the tank, and Dark as the money bag. Mage support. Oh yeah, that was it. Each of them are balanced in every way, with Hardcore possessing knowledge, Sora with strength, and Dark as money. That is legitimately one of his powers, which he regularly abuses, especially at the start of the series. But on top of some already great characters, each of them are flawed. Whether they rely on money or become too obsessed and become blinded by their goals, they always have friends who can pull them out of it, making them all the more genuine and real. Each character has their own ambitions, personality, as well as different pieces of knowledge, which will come to culminate into the most epic season finale I've ever seen in the history of Webtoon. Though perhaps the greatest thing to come of these three is the fact that these deeply broken people, also Sora, can come to develop a genuine connection, and despite all their struggles, slowly come to grow closer together as real friends. Now from what we've seen, Hardcore Loving Warrior is pretty good. Is it really a masterpiece? Well, yeah, considering the amount of care, detail, and attention poured into each panel, which comes out to be nearly perfect and just so exquisite, which is demonstrated better in none other than the incredibly well-crafted world building. Now, what is world building? Frick. Each character has a unique name, design, and personality, whether they're a main character or a side character that appears for one chapter. Take Reindeer Man or Octo Girl, or even some other random throwaway assassin who appears for like 3 panels. None of them serve any real purpose, but you can tell how much love and care has been poured into the creation of each and every one of them. But perhaps the best example would have to be the fight with Lazzy, otherwise known as L'Eregie, another vengeful soul like Hardcore Loving Warrior, who had the most important thing taken away from him by Zero, his pride. Additionally, for a demon to live after defeat is the greatest shame. He was spared by Zero, the one who killed Hardcore Loving Warrior, creating an ego quest for the both of them. As a result, this high-tier demon is sealed in the top floor of a dungeon, and it's up to Hardcore Loving Warrior and crew to somehow take him down. Only, they're all currently low-leveled, with the exception of Sora, who may be decently leveled, but has minimal combat experience or knowledge. And while those are both things Hardcore possesses, he's barely level 10. And Darkest Money, so yeah, pretty balanced team I'd say. Quite literally a level 1 versus level 100 boss moment. And despite the fact that on the literal brink of death, pulling out every trump card possible at the last second, Hardcore still takes the time to teach Dark while fending off Lazzy. And while Lazzy might be a vengeful, intimidating monster, he has a soft side to him, being weak to anything cute. It's true the majority of characters may not be super detailed or multifaceted, with the exception of Hardcore Loving Warrior. They don't have to be, because that allows for their personalities to shine through even more. Their simplicity serves to help create such a beautiful world. While they each have their own struggles, they also have very real personalities. It's obvious how much love and care is given to each and every one of them. Also, Drip Soup. I couldn't imagine the amount of work the author, Kim Se-hoon, had to put in order to create Hardcore Loving Warrior. It truly is nothing short of a lifetime's work, so it honestly blows my mind that he made it when he was only a sophomore in college. Seriously, how? As I mentioned previously, Hardcore Loving Warrior is perfectly planned out from beginning to end. Season 1 at least. And we can see this throughout the series with all the build-up, foreshadowing, and payoff that goes unnoticed throughout the series. No scene encapsulates this better than when Sad Smile bought a cursed sword off of Heartkeeper in chapter 8. 50 chapters later, Sad Smile would then go on to lure Hardcore Loving Warrior with the sword, revealing his true identity as President Kim, the one Hardcore is forced to work under. Here, he essentially blackmails Hardcore into entering a contract with him, and unbeknownst to both Hardcore Loving Warrior and the reader, he later used it to force him to betray his own party or die. Unfortunately for Sad Smile, Hardcore Loving Warrior is him, and he finds a loophole. As if Hardcore wasn't perfect enough already, another thing that Se-hoon excels in would have to be his storytelling, specifically backstories. He's able to craft the most compelling backstories with minimal dialogue. They may not be perfect, but they are still some of the best I've seen. Words are hardly spoken, and the pain and anguish of characters are instead beautifully illustrated in their actions. We see characters like Hardcore, who was pushed to a limit time and time again, or Arms, who had to sacrifice everything to protect the guild while suffering from a terminal illness, or even Master Swordsman, who could do nothing but watch all his friends fall apart. Se-hoon has the power to make an entire fanbase care about a single side character just because, well, he felt like it. There's a Giga employee called Manager Park 38, and the reason for that is because he's the 38th person in the Giga group to be called Manager Park. One of Korea's 3 most popular last names, behind Lee and Kim. Like Kim Jong-un, he may just be a side character, meant to assist the insanely overpowered antagonist of the arc. Yet he manages to steal the limelight in a single chapter of his backstory. More specifically, he was part of a 3-man group, alongside Bubble, yeah, I really don't know why she's named that, and Nubu, the overpowered antagonist of the arc. Every year, a tournament is hosted in Lucid Adventure, with an insane prize ranging anywhere up to an entire freaking country. While the tournament has many incredible moments, one of the most underrated would have to be the Siege round. During this round, teams have to balance fighting each other while building castles and structures to take out the other team. And in the case of Hardcore and Party, they must defeat potentially the most broken character possible for this game, Lubu, otherwise known as Feng Xian. Another thing that makes Hardcore even greater is that it's often inspired by history and mythology, and you can see the impact it's had on the author throughout the series. Feng Xian was many things, both stubborn and a traitor, but the reason he was so famous was because of his absolute strength. In fact, he was said to be undefeated in one-on-one combat. So, in Hardcore Loving Warrior fashion, he'd spin that fact on its head and use every trick and tactic against Lubu in order to win. Undefeated in 1v1s, then try 100v1. Able to one-shot anyone, stay away with magic. Everyone was reset to level 1 during the game. But due to the nature of his personal attribute and ability, Lubu had a strength stat of 1300, which is actually 300 higher than the normal limit, while Hardcore's was only a couple hundred. But Hardcore's strength relies not on his raw power, but rather his keen intellect. Once again, he turns it into his advantage. The enemy had underestimated Hardcore, and he uses his knowledge and wits to once again turn the game around. Speaking of the tournament, however, it was during a brief intermission in said tournament that we get to see one of the most out-of-pocket yet beautiful and realist conversations in Hardcore Loving Warrior, specifically Lucid Adventure. At a campfire party amidst the bustling partygoers, we see a conversation between two players. While initially they awkwardly stumble through conversation, as the night goes on, it eventually leads to them talking about how hard things are in the real world. Whether it be finding a job or pressure in academic studies, it seems no one truly has it easy, and they all find comfort in lucid adventure as a means of escape. In fact, for many of them, the game feels more real than the real world ever was, despite it only being a game in your dreams. Here, they feel free, a sort of escapism, much like how gaming is IRL. While he's also had his fair share of suffering, Hardcore wasn't always alone. In fact, it was in the game that he met Arms, and Master Swordsman, and Constant. Perhaps the most beautiful thing to come from lucid adventure isn't how beautiful and incredible the game is, but rather the fun, memories, and genuine connections you make playing the game with people. You're free to be yourself and escape reality, much like what video games are for a lot of us. In fact, that's a common theme for a lot of characters, being that they find solace in lucid adventure. We see Hardcore play it to escape his gambling debt. Well, actually, he kinda has to play the game if he wants to live. Arms plays it because she has cancer. Master Swordsman was a kendo prodigy, but unfortunately injured himself and is unable to compete in tournaments anymore. Hardcore learns to love and care for the both of them, who took him in even when he was alone. As for Constant, he looked up to Hardcore like a big bro, much like how Hardcore did to Master Swordsman and how Dark does to Hardcore. They formed a genuine connection with real chemistry as they went on quests and missions as a guild, and we see that Hardcore was actually happy at one point, but not Constant. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and as it turns out, Constant too was a part of Kim's factory. Unlike Hardcore, however, he was unable to pay off his debt, and as a result, Constant was constantly being beaten by Kim. Get it, cause Constant... anyways, when he's constantly being when he's consistently being beaten by Kim, who alongside Giga, tricks Constant into luring their guild into their own demise. They plant a piece of Nightmare on the ground, which latches onto him, much like the Venom symbiote from Spider-Man. Nightmare was a powerful ability that gave the player 77 times their current stats. Broken as it may have been, there were obvious drawbacks. It had been banned due to how dangerous it was. Regardless, it began to tempt and affect him subconsciously more as time went on. During the castle attack, the guild is ambushed and Constant's Nightmare piece reacts, and thus Arms is falsely captured and imprisoned. Arms led the Zara Guild, who were the closest to beating the absolute quest. It's said that whoever completes it first will conquer the world, which Giga interpreted as owning the game. Obviously, the Giga Group, a company led by the corrupt sons of the game's creator, weren't able to accept the fact that they're losing to an unemployed bomb, an employed bomb, and a cancer patient, and potentially lose out on both the game and its profits, and thus orchestrated the entire scenario. Arms never cared for any of that. She just wants to have fun with her guildmates with her remaining time left. Unfortunately, she gets banned and is never seen from again. To make it even worse, only Master Swordsman was aware of her passing, and now Hardcore blames the guild for abandoning Arms. He may be dumb and shallow, but it comes from a place of losing his beloved, and now places the blame on the only person he can, as he doesn't know the truth. Constant, his opposite, and his antithesis. Though, if anything, you can see more parallels being drawn between him and Dark, almost foils for one another. Both are Hardcore's little bro, they both awaken the transcendental attribute, they have opposing personalities and have switched sides with each other. Now, Constant's actually quite an interesting character. Going back to the Webtoon comments, we can really see how much the Webtoon comments have evolved over time. Now that's what I call character development, if you know what I'm saying. If anything, the Webtoon comments might be one of my favorite characters in the story, behind all these people. But in all seriousness, much like before with Hardcore Loving Warrior, everyone hated Constant. Initially, I did too, until I went back to reread Hardcore Loving Warrior just for this video. And I noticed that in fact Constant did nothing to hurt Arms' guild. He may have been tempted by Nightmare, but he never actually used it, despite how severely he was beaten in Kim's factory. If anything, props to him, because personally I would have folded immediately. He loved these people enough that he didn't betray them after everything he endured, even seeking revenge later on, and to that he has my utmost respect. Oh my goodness, I'm way too invested in these fictional characters. Conversely, he also does everything he can to help Hardcore Loving Warrior in every way possible, vowing to help him even if Hardcore only wishes to use him and sees him as a tool, and he's willing to betray anyone and do anything to do so. He'll even endure unimaginable pain as his body breaks down in order to help his bro, and that kind of friendship is so incredibly rare. Obviously, it's an unhealthy obsession, and while it'd be great if they rounded off his story with Hardcore Loving Warrior and Arms giving him the peace, closure, and redemption he needs, at this point his obsession has become his personality, so maybe not. And this leads me to the finale. With constant helping out hardcore in-game and some friends in the real world, it all ties into one climactic finale, where hardcore escapes Kim's factory in real life while managing to fight in the tournament in-game. A climactic showdown between hardcore loving warrior and Light, who's been built up to be one of the strongest, estimated to be rank 3 or above. While stats are usually capped at 999, they can be buffed beyond the limit through items or skills. With some outside help, he's able to multiply his magic stat by over 10 times and activate his personal attribute, allowing him to become Majin Light. It's over like that! Ah, wait, it actually is. Up until now, we've known dragons to be the strongest, making even hardcore and Hardheater some of the biggest menaces to tremble and bow their feet. However, unlike the saying that magic belongs to the dragons, the Majins were magic itself, an ancient race made of mana. Each spell is destruction, and he no longer needs incantations nor has spell delays. On the contrary, Hardcore has just broken his contract with Sad Smile, thus killing him in-game. As I mentioned previously, due to the nature of his class, he gets reset to level 1 every time he dies. Thus, a level 1 hardcore loving warrior crew pull up to the final combat round of the tournament. On the other team are Light and 3 others, 2 of whom are ranked top 50 in the game. However, Dark is a fatal trump card that can completely turn the tide of battle. In fact, he possesses one of the rarest and strongest personal attributes, being the transcendental personal attribute of time. More specifically, his attribute skill allows him to rewind time on a person. Now normally, you'd use this on someone to debuff them, with one exception of course, being Hardcore Loving Warrior. For 5 seconds, Hardheater and Sora managed to buy enough time for Dark to rewind Hardcore and enter his prime again. And honestly, the payoff is absolutely phenomenal. It's so gratifying to see Prime Hardcore after all these hard-fought battles where Hardcore has nothing but his wits and knowledge to stay afloat. Where instead, we finally get to see a glimpse of his full power. Even though Light's magic is over 10 times that of a maxed out player, Hardcore Loving Warrior is simply too OP. He has maxed out stats, broken moves, and he can't even take damage because of his armor set. He demolishes Light with a flick of his finger, sending him flying before he can even react. He takes out the other rankers in an instant, leaving the crowd in awe. In a last-ditch effort, Light uses Nightmarization, giving him a 77 times stat buff, as well as Nightmare powers, which allow him to penetrate Hardcore Loving Warrior's invincible armor. Here we get to see Hardcore's character development on full display when he protects the homies. He's come such a long way and saves the day, while protecting everyone, something he surely wouldn't have done at the start of the series. We see the parallels being drawn between these characters, and the development, payoff, and climax all culminating to create one of the greatest season finales I've ever read. Well, almost. Unfortunately, the real ending was a mess, and season 2 didn't quite meet the hype of the first season. I know the author had to go through a lot and make a ton of cuts, but man, season 2 was such a dramatic fall off, it's hardly recognizable. So yeah, I'll probably make a video on that next. Regardless, Hardcore Loving Warrior has been and always will be a timeless classic for me, and you should absolutely give it a read. With that being said, I've been Hardcore. Yes, really. And I will see you all next time. Peace.